Hello and welcome to the new season of the Drawn and Redrawn, the Making of India's Internal Boundaries podcast. This is a part of a larger India State Stories project that explores the evolution of India's political and administrative boundaries. This project is an undertaking by the Centre for Legislative Education and Research at Flame University in Pune. In this new season, we embark on a journey through the fascinating histories and narratives of each Indian state and union territories, exploring the pivotal events, influential personalities, and societal transformations that have shaped the subcontinent. In the 27th episode, we will learn how the Kingdom of Sikkim became one of the northeastern states of India. This episode is based on a corresponding article written by our team at India State Stories. These articles have been converted to audio conversations with the help of Google's Notebook LM. You can find the relevant article link in the show notes. Now, let's dive into the conversation.
I want you to just, for a second, visualize a map of India in 1947. The British are leaving, flags are changing, and there's this frantic energy to draw the borders. You've got Sardar Patel, the Iron Man, stitching the country together, getting over 500 princely states to sign on.
Right.
But if you look up north, right there in the Himalayas, there's this one spot that it refuses to resolve. It just stays blurry.
It really is the great anomaly of that whole period. I mean, while the rest of the subcontinent was solidifying into India or Pakistan, this one region, Sikkim, was just in this strange state of suspended animation.
For decades.
For nearly 30 years. It wasn't quite India, but it definitely wasn't fully independent either.
And that is exactly what we are unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into Sikkim's whole journey. And we're not just looking at the final date, May 16th, 1975, when it became the 22nd date.
We're going deeper.
Yeah, we're looking at the whole stack of documents that got us there. We've got treaties from the 1800s, intelligence reports, constitutional amendments. We even have maps from just a couple of years ago from 2021 that show the story isn't really over.
The mission here is to look past the dates. This is fundamentally a story about the tension between a traditional monarchy and modern democracy.
And it's all playing out on this tiny stage, sandwiched between two giants, India and China.
Which sounds terrifying for the people living there. I mean, the stakes were incredibly high. We have to ask, how does a small Himalayan kingdom even try to survive when history is moving against it?
And on the flip side, how does a massive democracy like India integrate a place that is so culturally distinct without just breaking it?
Exactly.
So let's get into the stack. We have to go way back. Before 1947, during the British Raj, Sikkim wasn't treated like, say, Hyderabad or Kashmir, was it? The sources keep calling it status ambiguous.
Well, ambiguous is putting it mildly. The technical term the British used was suzerainty.
Suzerainty, what does that actually mean?
Well, you have to look at the neighbors to get it. You had Bhutan, which the British basically treated as an independent kingdom they just guided. Then you had the other princely states inside India, which were clearly subordinate. Sikkim was stuck right in the middle of that.
So not a colony, but not quite a country.
Precisely. The Chogyals, that's the dynasty of monarchs who ruled Sikkim, they had what was called internal sovereignty. They ran their own police, their own court.
The day-to-day stuff.
Right. But the British held the leash on everything external. Foreign policy, defense, communications, all of it.
And unlike in other states, the British didn't install a resident, that sort of colonial watchdog, right inside the palace, did they?
No, they didn't. They managed it from a distance, which was key. The Treaty of Tatalia in 1817 and then Tumlong in 1861 set up this whole dynamic. It created a kind of psychological separation. The Chogyal felt like a king, not just a vassal.
Okay, let's talk about the Chogyal. Because from our notes, he wasn't just a political ruler like that prime minister. It's much deeper.
Oh, this is a crucial distinction. The Chogyal was a Dharmaraja, a righteous religious ruler. In the eyes of the Bhutia and Lepcha communities, the political and the spiritual were just fused in his person. He was the patron of the Drukpa Kagyu monasteries.
So to challenge him wasn't just a political rebellion.
No. It was bordering on sacrilege.
Yeah.
These monasteries, they were powerful socio-political institutions. They were the absolute backbone of the state.
Yeah.
So when we start talking about pro-democracy movements later, you have to understand they weren't just fighting a government. They were fighting a whole religious order.
Okay, so let's fast forward. It's 1947. Independence. Sardar Patel is going around with the instrument of accession, basically saying, sign this or we have a problem. Why did Sikkim get a pass? Why didn't he just force the issue?
It's one of the biggest what-ifs in Indian history. Patel and his advisor, B.N. Rao, they absolutely wanted immediate integration. They saw Sikkim as a huge security risk if it was just left floating out there.
But Nehru stopped them.
But Jawaharlal Nehru, the prime minister, he pumped the brakes.
Was that just sentimentalism? Like, oh, let the nice king keep his little kingdom?
There's probably a bit of idealism, sure. Nehru had a very sympathetic approach to the Himalayan states. He hoped they could be a sort of bridge between India and Tibet. But there was also a practical belief that Sikkim was just too different.
Right.
He thought forcing them in could cause a massive backlash. His strategy was to get them to choose India eventually, not to conquer them.
And that patience set the stage for this whole slow burn drama. But while Nehru is playing this long game, the ground under the Chogyal's feet is literally shifting.
Yeah.
We have to talk demographics because this seems to be the engine that drives the entire conflict.
You absolutely cannot understand the fall of Sikkim without understanding who actually lived there. By the 1950s, the population dynamics had completely inverted. You had the indigenous Lepchas and the ruling Bhutias.
Chogyal's people.
Exactly. But they were now a small minority. Over the previous decades, there had been these massive waves of immigration from Nepal.
So by the mid-20th century...
By the mid-20th century, roughly 75% of Sikkim's population was ethnically Nepalese.
3/4 of the population.
Yes. And here's the friction point. They were politically marginalized. The whole system was structured to favor the Bhutia Lepcha minority, to protect the, original culture.
So the Nepalese majority paid taxes, they worked the land, but they had almost no say in how the place was run.
This sounds like a powder keg.
I mean, 75% of your people are effectively locked out of the room where the decisions are made.
Exactly. And they weren't quiet about it. This is where you see the rise of the Sikkim State Congress, the SSC. They were the voice of that Nepalese majority.
And their platform was simple.
Very simple. We want democracy. We want one person, one vote.
Because in a one-person, one-vote system, the 75% wins every time.
And crucially, they also wanted accession to India. They saw democratic India as their protector against the feudal rule of the Chogyal.
But the Chogyal had his own faction, the Sikkim National Party.
Led by a man named Netuk Lama. This was the pro-palace group. Their slogan might as well have been Sikkim for the Sikkimese. They wanted independence, they wanted to keep the Chogyal and to keep the traditional power structures.
They were terrified of being swallowed by India.
Terrified. They knew their distinct culture, and let's be honest, their power would be completely diluted in a massive democracy.
So you have a deadlock. The majority wants in with India, the elite wants to stay out. 1950 rolls around, and India decides to formalize things with the Indo-Sikkim Treaty. This creates the protectorate status. What did that mean on paper?
It was a geopolitical bear hug, really. India basically said, okay, Chogyal, you can keep your throne, you can run your internal affairs, but we own your defense, your communications, and your foreign policy.
Sounds like a pretty sweet deal for the Chogyal, actually. He gets Indian protection, but keeps his crown.
It was a compromise, but, and this is the detail that changes everything, there was a clause in that treaty, a sort of sleeper clause.
Sleeper clause.
The treaty gave India, and I'm quoting here, overriding powers, specifically in the event of a threat to law and order or internal unrest.
Oh, wow. That's a backdoor key.
It was Chekhov's gun. India essentially said, you can run the house, but if the house catches fire, we have the legal right to kick the door down and take over.
And for 20 years, that clause just sat there.
Just sat there on paper, gathering dust.
Until it didn't. Okay, let's jump to the 1960s. The Chogyal at this time is Thondup Namgyal. And reading the notes, he doesn't seem like a guy who was happy being a protectorate. He wanted more.
Thondup was ambitious, very ambitious. He was Western educated. He had an American wife, Hope Cook, and he had this vision of Sikkim as a fully sovereign nation, maybe a Switzerland of the East.
So he starts pushing back.
He starts pushing back against India, wanting to get rid of that protectorate label.
But the timing, I mean, you look at the map in the 1960s, this is not a calm neighborhood.
That's the critical context. You have the Sino-Indian War of 1962, which India lost badly. You have China fully annexing Tibet. So New Delhi is looking at the map, and they are terrified.
Right.
They see Sikkim as this tiny thumb just jutting out into Chinese territory. It's right on the Chicken's Neck corridor. If China takes Sikkim, they could cut off all of Northeast India.
So while Thondup is dreaming of being Switzerland, India is looking at him and thinking, you are our open back door.
Exactly. And then Indira Gandhi comes to power, and she is a complete realist. She sees Thondup getting cozy with this idea of independence, maybe pivoting away from India, and she just thinks, we cannot risk this.
Thondup really seems to have miscalculated the room, didn't he? There was even a proposal in 71 for associate state status. It would have made them partners.
It was a huge upgrade. It would have given Sikkim a seat in the Indian parliament while keeping its autonomy, but Thondup refused. He thought it was a trap.
A step toward a total merger.
Yeah, he dug his heels in.
And that refusal was the breaking point. India realizes the Chogyal is now a liability. So what do? They don't invade.
No, they didn't need to. Remember the demographics. India just starts to pivot its support towards the pro-democracy movement to Qazi Dorji and the Sikkim National Congress.
They just amplify the voices that were already...
Amplified the voices, yeah. And the sources mentioned in a newspaper, Kanchenjunga, it was hammering home the message of democracy, criticizing the monarchy, really whipping up public sentiment.
So 1973... the pressure cooker explodes. And we're not talking about a few people with signs here.
No, these were massive, widespread protests. The Jan Andolan, the People's Movement, thousands of people, mostly the Nepalese population, marched on the capital, Gangtok. They surrounded the palace. The police just collapsed. The entire administration ceased to function.
So the Chogyal is in his palace, watching his kingdom just burn down around him.
And he has no choice. He actually asks India to intervene to restore order.
And click. That's the sound of Chekhov's gun finally going off.
India uses that 1950 clause to step in. They sent in troops, restored order, and then effectively took charge of the administration. This leads to the Government of Sikkim Act in 1974.
The legal sources call this act a transition, but reading between the lines, it feels more like a constitutional heist.
It was a constitutional coup, in a way. The act turned the Chogyal into a figurehead, a rubber stamp. All real power was transferred to the elected assembly and the new chief minister, Qazi Dorji.
So the Chogyal is stripped of power. But Qazi Dorji and his party, they aren't satisfied with just power. They want the full merger.
They wanted to close the loop. Qazi Dorji famously said they wanted the full stream of Indian democracy. So on April 9, 1975, the Sikkim Assembly passes a resolution abolishing the monarchy and declaring Sikkim a constituent unit of India.
And they held a referendum to back it up.
They did. The official numbers showed overwhelming support, something like 97% for the merger. Now, we should note, international observers at the time, like the British Foreign Office, were privately very skeptical about the speed and style of it all.
It happened incredibly fast.
Incredibly fast. And the ballot boxes were guarded by Indian troops. It definitely raises eyebrows.
But legally, once that vote was in, the Indian parliament moved at lightning speed.
They passed the 36th Amendment almost unanimously. And on May 16, 1975, the flag changed. Sikkim officially became the 22nd state. Indira Gandhi called it a great experiment.
The kingdom is dead. Long live the state. But this is where the deep dive gets really interesting for me. Usually history books stop right there, and they all lived happily ever after as an Indian state. But our stack has documents from 2020 and 2021. The integration didn't just stop.
No, because you can't just legislate away centuries of history and identity. That core tension, that fear the Bhutia and Lepcha people had of being culturally wiped out, it didn't just vanish because the flag changed.
And you see this in the 2021 map changes. I mean, I grew up knowing the districts as North, South, East, and West Sikkim. Very functional, very boring.
And now they've changed them. North Sikkim is Mangan, West is Gyaltsing, South is Namche, East is Gangtok. Plus, they added 2 brand new districts, Pakyong and Sorang.
Why does renaming a district even matter? Isn't that just semantics?
It's identity. By reclaiming the indigenous names, the state government is asserting the local culture right there on the map itself. It's a signal. Yes, we are part of India, but this land has a history that predates 1975.
And Pakyong, that's the new airport district, isn't it?
Exactly. That's the infrastructure piece. The airport, built between 2015 and 2021, physically connects Sikkim to the rest of India in a way it never ever was before. So you have this dual movement, physical integration with airports, but cultural assertion through name.
And laws. The Sikkim Forest Rights Act from 2020 popped up. That seems to touch on the same nerve.
It touches the third rail, land. The act tries to formalize customary land usage. It's the state trying to build a legal fence around the traditional rights of the tribal populations, the very people who lost the monarchy.
It's an attempt to answer that old question. How do we stay unique?
Exactly.
So what's the verdict here? We started with this fuzzy kingdom. We've seen it get squeezed by geopolitics, torn apart by demographics, and reassembled as a state.
I think Sikkim really challenges the way we think about borders. We tend to see them as just lines drawn by people in Delhi or London. But Sikkim shows us that a state is a living negotiation.
It wasn't inevitable.
Not at all. There was a series of choices. Nehru chose to wait. Thondup chose to resist, the people chose to protest, and India chose to seize the moment when that geopolitical window finally opened.
And that negotiation is still happening. Every time they rename a district or pass a forest law, they are, in a way, renegotiating the terms of that 1975 merger.
We will be part of you, but we will be ourselves.
That is the experiment Indira Gandhi talked about, integrating a region without erasing it. 50 years on, the experiment is still running.
It absolutely is.
Well, next time you look at a map of India and see that little thumb sticking up between Nepal and Bhutan, remember, it's not just a shape on a map. It's a layer cake of treaties, riots, and compromises. Thanks for exploring it with us.
Always a pleasure to dig into the archives.
Catch you on the next deep dive.